All right, bros. Monero Matteo, welcome back. I know I told you guys I was taking a little bit of a break, and I was. I was enjoying my break. I was enjoying trying to stay off social media a little bit. I was enjoying setting up my business, which is going pretty good, by the way. We've got the website being worked on. It's a Wix website, and I've actually been doing some research to figure out how it is I can get a Monero plugin on Wix. And if you guys have any information on that, let me know. From what I looked up, it's not something you can really do because it's more of a closed structure when you're trying to set up something on Wix. Or if you guys like make websites, let me know. I mean, I'm trying to get something built up for the accounting firm that we're opening up here in my neck of the woods. We will accept Monero. I think it's going to be the first of its kind. And, I'm having some trouble trying to figure that out. I'm thinking maybe for the website, I'll put up like a, Monero accepted here sticker, sort of like what you'll see here. Stoic XMR, he had asked, what does the road to Monero standard look like? What are the important building blocks? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, more businesses showcasing this at checkout. And this is a Monero accepted here sticker. And I'm thinking about just putting this on the website so that people can, know that we accept Monero or whatever. But I've also looked into now payments. I've looked into something called Globee, which I think was promoted at one time by Fluffy Pony. But let me know your thoughts if you guys have any, because I'm still trying to work on setting up the business. I'm trying to make new business cards. I actually do have business cards here, but they're old and they have an old email address, so that's not going to work. So I'm getting things built up, and things are good. But had to roll on back because turns out when the second biggest crypto exchange in the world, which advertised for the Super Bowl, which got Tom Brady and his divorcee witched wife on board, it becomes somewhat of a news story. And it collapsed, and I guess they're $8 billion in the hole. And you have a lot of big investment entities who were involved in this. Obviously, a lot of smaller retail traders who are not going to get their money back because they're unsecured creditors. And it's just a mess. It's just a total mess. And it's just one Mashinsky and one Bankman-Fried bro after another, finagling our lovely, innocent, but oftentimes naive crypto bros into their snares. And that's one thing that we've been trying to do here is we've been trying to expose falsities and delusions, and we've been trying to get people away from this religious crypto fanaticism out there. We've been trying to do a lot to try to get people to stray from the deceptions which are out there, which are going to lose people a lot of money and are losing people a lot of money. One of those things we're going to talk about later is this digital gold theme that we've seen here for a little bit. Turns out when your crypto collapses by 80%, it's hard to make that case. But the concept in and of itself doesn't really make sense, the digital gold idea, and we'll get to that a little bit here. But there are a lot of things in crypto which lead people astray and cause people to lose a lot of money. And in Monero, it's not like we're going super hyper mega bullish yet. But we're going to look at a chart which shows that Monero indeed is gaining against Bitcoin, and it has been over the last year. And there are more reasons for that we're going to get into. One of those reasons being because the fundamental value proposition of Bitcoin is being undermined. If you're selling something as digital gold and it loses, again, like 80% of its value over a certain time span, it becomes hard to market that. And instead of marketing it as digital cash, which it should be marketed as because that's what's in the white paper, but ultimately didn't really become that because of the block size staying small and the failures of the layer 2s, the complexities thereof, and the KYC and the third-party custodianship and everything like that. The fungibility problems. They had to pivot to digital gold. And now people are just wanting to stay away from crypto altogether. I mean, they're getting screwed on every front. And so because people have lost the original ethos and they don't understand what the original value proposition of crypto was, which was to simply be peer-to-peer digital payment systems that circumvented third-party custodians. That's essentially just what it was. Well, they are saying, well, this is just a scam. I don't want to get involved. This doesn't make any sense. But that original ethos has been kept in Monero. and in the Monero ecosystem. And Monero has been continually taking over the dark web marketplaces. And because it's being actually used in economically valuable settings and environments as digital cash and private digital cash at that, private fungible digital peer-to-peer cash, well, it's got an inelastic demand that at least gives it some kind of price floor. For Bitcoin, that's going away because of the takeover of Monero as a more superior form of private digital cash, which was, again, the original use case of crypto. And so, I mean, we're going to get to little John McAfee, rest his heart, rest his spirits, here in this video, where he makes the case that Bitcoin's going to go to zero. And I think it's entirely possible. Now, will it go to zero? Maybe not, but proverbially, it's going to go very low if this kind of keeps up and people start to realize the value proposition of Bitcoin is not to just hold it and just, cool, it's a store of value, bro, and I've got my digital gold. It's to actually transact. And, you know, with that proposition becoming more dubious because you got to do it on layer twos, and if you're going to do payments on layer twos, you know, why not just use cash, or why not just use another crypto like Monero, which is more simple to use? You know, when that comes into question, it's an interesting thing. It's a very interesting thing, and I don't think people have caught on yet. But let's just get into the content. I've rambled here a little bit, and we have a lot to get to. So, firstly, let's just get to the story. This is from Zero Hedge. Here are all the funds that are about to lose billions in FTX. And Binance, which you're going to talk about because Binance now says they're going to do proof of reserves. And we in the Monero community have had a little bit of a troublesome relationship with Binance, locking withdrawals, making it so that people can't withdraw their Monero from the exchanges because it's suspected that they're doing their own little fractional reserve scheme over there. Well, they were kind of behind, in many ways, the bank run, which led to the collapse of FTX. And it says here, the second world's largest crypto exchange and biggest ever crypto fraud. They walked away from bailing it out after kind of causing a bank run on it. And here's the list of the people who were involved. You've got Tiger Global, which is down 55% this year already. I guess it's one of these hedge funds which overcharges people to manage their money because, you know, it's not like a Robinhood bro could do it better, which, if anything, has been proven over the last couple of years, they can. Just use Reddit and Wall Street Bets, and, you know, in most cases, you could outperform hedge funds. But moving on, you know, there are more funds, Third Point and Alameda Capital Management, some other hedge funds, and, you know, you've got the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan invested in this stuff. I mean, goodness gracious. You've got Masayoshi Son's, his last name is Son's, SoftBank, which had invested in this, which is a big tech investor. And, yeah, billions of dollars lost. So, pretty crazy. And this is going to lead to so much regulation, it's not even funny. And that's probably why CZ, the CEO of Binance, is coming out there and saying, yeah, we're going to make sure that we've got the reserves. He's like front-running the regulation. He's like, hey, guys, look, I'm going to try to make the initiative here to make it so that we're square and we're doing things by the book, because I know you guys are looking to really kind of get involved in our operations, and we just want to let you know we've got it covered, so why don't you just take a step back? I'll do the heavy lifting for you and that kind of thing. And FTX is now under investigation by the SEC, so I've read, and the authorities. And who knows where this Bankman bro is at. But the dude has totally been fried. He's lost $16 billion of net worth. And so he could be at a negative net worth now because he probably has personal debts. And after all of his lawsuits, I mean, yeah, he's going to be a bit in the hole, if you want to call it that. So Zero Hedge on Twitter, they say FTX is some mutant combo of Lehman, a liquid undercapitalized, and MF Global illegally used client funds to fund its own terrible investments. So, yeah, the dude's going to be going to jail. Now, I did see a post that if he doesn't go to jail, that would indicate that maybe he was working with some powerful entities on the inside, the deep state, quote unquote, if you want to call them that. You know, because he was buddy-buddy with people like Bill Clinton and people like this. Maybe he was kind of planted there to do this, to run this show and cause a whole lot of problems, which would then incentivize more KYC, incentivize more regulations and things like this. So let's get to some of the consequences and aftermath we can expect from this disaster here. This is from Odell. He says, the result, massive short-term volatility, mostly downward, corporate implosions, and the Bitcoin miners are going to be freaking worse off than they already are. I mean, there have already been consolidations and mergers and acquisitions taking place in the Bitcoin mining sector. There have already been bankruptcies, but now it's about to get worse because what's Bitcoin at now? I think Bitcoin dropped to a 15K handle. Yeah, it's at about 16K now. So not only is the difficulty getting harder because you got more corporates entering the space, not only are energy prices going up, which make it less profitable, not only are the ASICs going up because of the chip problems, but you have now Bitcoin losing a lot of its value. And if the halving continues, and we'll get to this here in a little bit, if the halving continues and there isn't that subsidy that the miners are getting to process these transactions and to continue mining these blocks, well, then the fees are going to have to go up significantly. And that's not going to be good for establishing this, again, as digital cash or as a payment system. And then they're going to, what are they going to do? They're going to pivot back to the digital gold thing. Well, it's digital gold. We can trust the code, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But that's not the initial use case. That's just a cope. And we're going to talk more about that. But corporate implosions, worse regs for Bitcoin going forward, targeting sovereign usage, as we've seen a little bit in Europe already, plus more surveillance. Monero, super key, of course, increased exchange centralization with Binance dominance. Yep. And Binance is pretty cozy with regulators all over the world. I mean, we've seen stories how in the Netherlands, Binance allowed the government to conscript this person's Bitcoin that they had on the exchange that they got from, I think, Bisq or some other, dirty Skid Row-like place, right? And it was tainted, and so they allowed the Netherlands government to seize the Bitcoin. And so they're pretty tight with the government, and they're pretty tight regardless of all they say about how we're moving towards decentralization and all this stuff. They had like a weird tweet earlier today where they're like, yeah, this is a bad situation, guys, but we're going to really work with the regulators. Things are going to get better. Regulation's going to get stronger, and it's going to become more decentralized to space. And, the ecosystem will just grow stronger as a result. It's just like, where did this decentralization comment come from? How does decentralization play into this? Like, if you have more regulation and you have more centralization of the exchanges because you just knocked out one of your biggest competitors, where does this decentralization come from? Like, decentralization has just become like a cope buzzword for like, explaining away and hand-waving away anything that goes against the hyper-Bitcoinization thesis or whatever goes against the cult, right? But moving on, increased friction moving from fiat to Bitcoin and vice versa. Yeah, so we could probably anticipate that. But look at this dominance of Binance here. You've got Binance comprising of almost 75% of the cryptocurrency exchange volumes for the last 24 hours. I mean, that is dominance right there. Coinbase, I mean, it's amazing just how little volume Coinbase has compared to Binance. I thought it was perhaps the other way around. I didn't know Binance was so big, actually. It's really quite something. But nevertheless, that's what's going on. Coinbase, obviously, hooked into the new crypto world order. We've talked about who has invested in them and the deals they've made with the devil. And let's just recall how Brian Armstrong came out there. Even though he doesn't list Monero on the exchanges, Brian Armstrong says that, yeah, the most optimal cryptocurrency that could be adopted by the world is something like Monero, basically, where it's private. The internet started with HTTP. It went to HTTPS. Right now we have a bunch of cryptos which are being surveilled by everybody. You got fungibility problems. Wouldn't it be great if we had a private cryptocurrency? And, of course, he doesn't list it, which is just like, okay, well, why do we need you then? But is TradeOgre on here? Is TradeOgre, our lovely TradeOgre, on this legend of exchanges here? Yeah, so TradeOgre isn't even on the map for cryptocurrency exchange volumes. I wonder why. Could it be because Like they have every privacy coin on here and they can't track any of the activity that's taking place. Now, it's not like they can't track any of the activity because, Bitcoin comes to and from TradeOgre to some of these other exchanges, and then the exchanges see that happening, and then they shut down the people's account. But it's firstly interesting to note how Monero is now at the top. We've had Pirate Chain have some dominance on TradeOgre for a number of months. I think it was actually the dominant crypto when I first came to TradeOgre. It was there for quite a long time. And then you had Darrow gain a lot of prominence, which it's still rather prominent. I'm surprised, actually, just how much activity there is on Darrow. Like versus Bitcoin, it's doing really quite well. It's a surprise to me. Now, some of you guys are very skeptical of Darrow. I'm very skeptical of Darrow myself. I did make a video about it, and I used to talk somewhat positively about it. But there have been some things that have made me change my tune. One, the behavior of the community over there. They seem to be very antagonistic to Monero for whatever reason. That's not all of them, though. I did have somebody hit me up on Twitter who makes NFTs apparently on Darrow. Apparently, people are making NFTs on Darrow now, which is exciting to hear about. And, he's a Monero bro, and he's pro Monero, and he likes the show. But, there have been a lot of controversies about how strong the code actually is and what actually comprises the code. And, I did my video based on the public information which was out there that they had put out there. But I did add the disclaimer. I'm not a tech bro. I've looked into the actual code because I'm not a freaking genius like that. But that's why I just continue to talk about Monero and just hammer that in because I know it works. I know it's taking over the dark web marketplace. I know the IRS has a bounty on it, XYZ, right? I know it works because of the heuristics. When it comes to Darrow, I need to actually see it be transacted in environments and situations where people are going to die if it doesn't work as advertised. So there's that, but it is doing pretty well. It is doing pretty well. There's like a very strong momentum for people buying this stuff, which is rather interesting. But yeah, here's TradeOgre, the best exchange ever. You can always trust TradeOgre, interestingly enough. Now, disclaimer, maybe you can't, right? But it's been around for quite a long time. And I remember talking with one of the guys from Haven Protocol. I did an interview with somebody from that team. I think his name was Hawk, something like a year and a half ago. And he's like, yeah, TradeOgre just keeps kicking along. I've been using TradeOgre for years, and they've never rug pulled anybody, as sketchy as it looks. And yeah, I don't think there's any fractional reserve stuff going on over here. They seem to run a pretty tight ship over at TradeOgre. And the crypto vigilante bros are trying to get these guys to add Monero pairs because as you'll see down here, you've got USDT markets, and then you've got way down here, if my picture isn't in the way, Litecoin markets. And so it'd be great if we got Monero markets. I think that would be a huge step in the right direction, but I don't know what goes into that on a technical level. Maybe it's very hard to do. I'm not sure. But yeah, one thing I want to point out, and we'll try to explain some of the reasonings for these later, or for this later, is if you look at the 1 year track from Monero against Bitcoin, there is clearly an uptrend. There's clearly people out there who are increasingly valuing Monero instead of Bitcoin. Now, is it because the value proposition for Bitcoin as digital gold is decreasing? It could be. Could it be because Monero is taking over the dark web marketplaces? It could be. Could it be because people maybe see Monero as digital gold because of its fungibility and because it's ultimately private? It could be. I mean, people are reading these stories, which we're about to get to, where people are having their Bitcoin confiscated because the government just arrests them and says, hey, you're not leaving here until you give us the Bitcoin. As we told you, right? If people know you have an asset or they know you have something, you're already 90% of the way to confiscation. That's the truth. And nobody wants to talk about that because, that just kills another cope on the list. But that's the truth. If people know you have something, it's really just a matter of how they can turn the screws on you in order to get it out of you. I mean, it's like people go to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, because they're going to get tortured, and there's information that people want to get from them, right? Like the CIA bros or whatever. Okay, but that information in your head that you know about certain things, it's not on a blockchain. It's not on an immutable public ledger for everyone to see. That's just stuff in your brain. When it comes to like information, Bitcoin, that is on a public blockchain, which is tied to your identity, through metadata or through KYC or whatever. And they know you have it. It's not a matter of, well, let's just see what this person knows. And if we turn the screws, well, let's see what he tells us. Because in most cases, as they've done studies on, they'll just say whatever in order to make the pain stop. Maybe it's not true information. But on the blockchain, the truth lives forever. And so they know you've got the Bitcoin, and all they got to do is they've got to maybe put a tax lien on you, maybe conscript other assets of yours, maybe throw you in jail, maybe torture you, maybe whatever, in order to get the Bitcoin from you. Okay, so the real unconfiscatable asset is the asset which is private. It's not necessarily the asset that you're securing with the seed phrase or with a private or public key or whatever. It's an asset nobody knows you have in the first place, and nobody's going to come after you. Doesn't that make sense? But, the copers will come up with every excuse not to just think logically about these things, which is one reason why you really do get a lot of benefit not getting in Bitcoin at all. I don't have any Bitcoin, full disclosure. I have 0 Bitcoin. And so I'm able to think rationally about these things and not cope about it. But maybe there are things I'm missing because I don't own Bitcoin and I'm too antagonistic against it. But I don't really think I am. Now, there are some people out there in the space who I respect. They think like Bitcoin's going to become the global monetary standard. It's going to become the asset that everything just collapses into. I don't know about that. I'm very skeptical of that. They offer arguments. I honestly think it's going to be gold. It's not even going to be any crypto. It's going to be gold. Because what are the central banks buying? Well, they're buying gold. Now, maybe they base one of these cryptos off gold, make it redeemable for gold or something like that. But, yeah, I don't think it's going to be Bitcoin. I think that's total cope. But that conversation could go on forever. But let's go on to some takes here. So I said that crypto usury bros like Mashinsky and Bankman-Fried continue to get countless good and innocent people caught up in the collateral damage of their tricky schemes. Mashinsky, Bankman-Fried. Oh, how we know the types, many such cases. Just keep it simple and use crypto for how it was originally intended, P2P digital private cash. Right. Let's keep it simple, ladies and gentlemen. As they told us in sales, KISS. Keep it short and simple. Monero's the way. And this is from CZ Binance. He had made a statement. He said, all crypto exchanges should do Merkle tree proof of reserves. Banks run on fractional reserves. Crypto exchanges should not. Binance will start to do proof of reserves soon, full transparency, which I think is fantastic. I think that's a really, really positive development that I'm very happy about. And Kevin Watt had said something on Twitter recently where he said that the development of Seraphis on Monero, which, Carl, you had asked about, is going to make it easier for this to be the case because there's going to be optional transparency. But frankly, I think that they can do it right now. Now, the question, of course, becomes if they do post their view and spend key and opt into this kind of regulatory initiative or just policy initiative, well, how do we know there aren't different wallets hanging around? How do we know that they're displaying all of the reserves? And with Monero, that is tremendously difficult because it's a private cryptocurrency. But we do have a lot of speculation, and we've talked more about this in our Monero market manipulation video. We've talked about this with Body Anarchy and Kevin Watt, and I think we actually discussed this with Doug on Monero Talk at some point. This was like a year ago when everybody was having problems withdrawing from Monero, which consistently is a problem, by the way. This is not a problem which has shored up. I mean, there are still withdrawal problems every now and then, which makes you wonder, do they not have the Monero that they say that they have? And then the speculation is that, they're loaning this Monero out to people to short it. They're doing naked shorts, which means they're basically selling the Monero without actually having the Monero. And then you have got more paper Monero out there than actual Monero in the reserves. And if you've got more artificial selling than you have of supply, then that drives down the price. And who knows, maybe there's a profit incentive for that, but maybe there's also something more nefarious going on where CZ Binance is elected by the deep state bros in order to try to keep the demand for Monero down, the adoption down, because they understand how big of a risk it is. And what's the way you do that in this kind of like kids play degenerate gambling casino of a crypto market? Well, you just keep the price down. You keep the action for the price down, and you just have people lose interest at that point because people just want to buy what's going up, right? So that's one conspiracy. There's no direct evidence for that, but that's one thought. But there is a lot of speculation that there is manipulation happening, and there is a fractional reserve scheme going on with Monero. And if he does go on this initiative, then that should be very good for Monero. But at the end of the day, you got to take your Monero off the exchanges. You can't have stuff on the exchanges. It's just, do we even need to say that at this point with what we just saw? But yeah, keep it off the exchanges. Get a lovely Cake Wallet. Used to be a sponsor of the channel. Love Cake Wallet. And Cake Wallet, by the way, since we're on the topic of exchanges, they're going to be taking over, or maybe they're not taking over, but they are getting more involved with Haveno. Because Haveno, which is a project that we've talked about here for quite a while, they are, I guess, kind of in this stalling phase where they haven't been working like they, or as we would have liked to have seen them be. And so Cake Wallet is sort of, facilitating more development. They're financing more CCS proposals. So thank you, Cake Wallet, for doing that, because especially in this kind of environment with these kinds of events happening, I think there would be a huge demand for something like Haveno, which would be a decentralized peer-to-peer exchange based on Monero, which would be totally private, which would allow you to trade for different cryptocurrencies totally privately, and there wouldn't really be this kind of centralized corporation on top. Although there, I guess, will be some kind of like committee which is going to determine what's happening with the fees and what projects to support in the Monero ecosystem. So that's kind of interesting and weird. I've heard some complaints about that, but I think it's still a good thing. We need more decentralized exchanges like Haveno for sure. So thank you, Cake Wallet. That's what's up. But where do I want to go from now? I think I wrapped up those comments there. But where do we want to go from here? So the worst events in crypto history. This is from Edgy Bro, the DeFi Edge, Mt. Gox hack in 2014, the DAO hack in 16, Terra Luna collapse in 22, FTX sells to Binance in 22, which they didn't. They just collapsed. Binance backed out of the deal. And then 3AC collapsed in 22. The three worst events in crypto happened this year. Now, this is why I wanted to comment on this. Oh, he also left out Celsius, right? It's kind of a big deal. But what I want to comment on is these are singular events, okay, which are bad. People lose a lot of money. There's a lot of panic. There's a lot of liquidation, everything like that. That's a problem. And that spooks a lot of people out of the space. It's seen as volatile. It's seen as crazy. Why get involved when these people who are buying Super Bowl commercials and have Matt Damon doing commercials for them are going belly up and end up being frauds? Why get involved? All that. I understand. But ultimately, the problem is worse than that, because it's not just you have, these frauds and these schemes happening, but you also have this spirit of deception, delusion, and grift in the crypto community and in the space. Everybody's just trying to make a buck. These influencers, these people who are lying about how private Bitcoin is and these other cryptocurrencies, fungibility not a problem, all this stuff. Michael Saylor the Savior, Sepsberg, who we've talked about forever, just shamelessly pumping every opportunity they get, never wanting to discuss downsides, never wanting to give people a rational take and perspective so that they can make an informed and intelligent, rational choice. Like, there's very little of that. And there's like this religious crypto fanaticism where people are made to believe that in order to save the world, we've got to buy Bitcoin. And it's not even like, let's use Bitcoin for what it's originally intended to be used for, which is digital cash, but let's just buy it and hold it. If you do that, you're part of the revolution. You're part of the hyper-Bitcoinization, eschatological sunrising of a new era. It's like, dude, this is crazy, okay? And, people kind of hit on me for talking about Christianity on the channel, but you got to understand, one of the reasons for that is because I don't want to get people into this kind of idolizing religious crypto fanaticism. It's very unhealthy, and that loses people a lot of money because, 101 investing is you don't get your emotions involved in your financial life, in your financial activities. And that's what crypto is. It's a financial world. And people want to make it to be more than it is. That's all part of the grift thing. And there is an element where it's like, yeah, this stuff would be important for freedom. Yeah, it'd be important for overcoming the central banks. And finance is to some degree integrated into a lot of aspects of our life. I understand all that. But when you're talking about a technology which can be used for good or evil because it's inherently neutral, it depends on how people are using the technology. You're just going out there and saying, you could buy this stuff and you can be part of the revolution. Things are going to be great if you get involved, and there's no hope except for Bitcoin. You inspire a lot of delusion, and you inspire people to put their life savings into this thing because they think not only is it digital gold, not only does it make sense, I've been down the rabbit hole or whatever, but they think that if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter if they lose all their money because we're all screwed anyway. It's like a big black pill. It's like, hey, take this pill because either you die or either you live or you die and everybody dies with you. It's like a cult like Jim Jones thing. You know what I mean? And it's very unhealthy. And what I've been wanting to do here, even though I seem hyperbolic at times by talking about the super hyper mega bullish case of Monero and all this stuff, which is fun, and I do try to add some pizzazz a little bit to the conversation, but ultimately, I tried to be level with you guys about creating a logical and coherent macro case for why Monero makes sense. And I have been honest about the downsides of this theory, some of the pitfalls, which is, yeah, maybe people are apathetic about where crypto is going. Maybe they don't see the crypto coup d'etat happening, where MasterCard and the big banks and everything like everybody like that are getting involved in crypto and are totally co-opting it, with Google investing billions of dollars and making it so that you can look up people's crypto addresses and, all this stuff. Or they're just apathetic about privacy, or, there's just a lack of education. I do offer downsides, and I try to be honest. And, we talked about Gazprom maybe a year and a half ago, and I told you guys, yeah, this seems like a really good play. This seems like a really good idea, except there is a little risk that it is a Russian company, and things could happen with that because they're an enemy and all that stuff. Well, I didn't anticipate the invasion of Ukraine happening. And so what happened? Our position went to zero. And, I tried to be, to some degree, honest about the risks, my limitations and stuff, but there's almost none of that in the crypto sphere. There's very little humility. There's very little, talk about, hey, what if this doesn't actually work out the way that we anticipated? What if this actually isn't a coherent position? But, it's similar to what happened in the 2018 block size wars. It's just like you get banned or you get blocked, or, people just shout you down and say that you're not a believer. It's sort of, it's an ugly thing to see, but that spirit pervading crypto in the aggregate, I feel like is worse than these events that are taking place here. These are more tangible events, but ultimately the crypto space is in a very unhealthy way. And there is this deal with the devil happening right now where it's like, yeah, we're going to play along with the regulators. We're going to bet that if they regulate us out of existence, basically, and make everything KYC, then we're going to get the adoption from the big institutions. We're going to get the gains. How awesome. So basically, let's trade our freedom for money. That's essentially what's happening for the most part in crypto, and that's just seen as okay. I mean, the Overton window has changed so much over the last 10 years. It's really quite something to see, where at first, any talk of regulation was just like, dude, what are you doing here? Like, this is not your spot. This is not your place to be. We're a bunch of hardcore anarcho-capitalist libertarians who don't want the government involved in anything. We're going to transact without the government. But now it's almost normal. It's just like, well, dude, of course you're going to have KYC. Duh. Don't you want to be protected from fraudsters? I mean, of course you got to have the government looking after you. It's just like, oh my goodness, where are we? And, this is just kind of where crypto is right now. And it seems to be getting worse, but there also seems to be somewhat of an awakening happening where people are starting to recognize where this is going, and maybe that's why you're seeing this movement in Monero here over the last year. So those are just some comments on that. Let's move on. And I did have a comment here from Examair, and I wonder if he's still around. He actually gave me a Monero wallet, like a year ago or something like that. He was starting an online shop. I still have it, by the way. I still use it. My lovely Monero wallet. You've got Hal Finn on the back saying, looking at ways to add more anonymity to Bitcoin. Pretty sweet. I wonder if he still sells it. It's a really nice wallet, actually. You've got a bunch of pockets and stuff. Anyways, he says here, moving from government-sanctioned banks to government-sanctioned crypto banks, aka exchanges, is a crappy move. Use Monero, decentralized. And he said this back in September of this year, so he was a bit ahead of the curve. But he is retweeting something from Haveno, who we just talked about, saying centralized exchanges delisting Monero are just making everybody a favor, doing everybody a favor. People are being forced to understand that moving from banks to crypto banks is not what cryptocurrencies are meant to be. Peer-to-peer finance is the future. Yeah, and I'm really beginning to understand, and I think many people are, that the delisting of Monero from exchanges, particularly, which is something which is happening in South Korea and the UK, is actually a blessing. It's actually a good thing because of what we just saw. If Monero is not on these exchanges, then it can't be something which is liquidated as much as some of these other cryptos which may be on the exchange, if that makes sense. Because if there's a run on this exchange, well, then people are going to liquidate whatever they can to get out of that exchange with their money. And, if Monero is not on the exchanges, then that kind of prevents the same kind of liquidation from happening with that. Anyways, so just some comments there. Moving on. A lot of doom and gloom on the timeline. This is Will Clemente. This is a dark moment for the industry that puts a dark cloud over the reputation of the space for a while. However, the case for Bitcoin has not changed, and the Bitcoin protocol is unscathed. Have no fear, Bitcoin will rise again. But here's what he doesn't acknowledge. He doesn't acknowledge that the case for Bitcoin is changing. It is indeed changing because of what's going on, again, on the darknet marketplaces. Because think about it this way, okay? If cryptocurrencies are competing to be payment systems, which is really where the battleground is, it's not for the store of value market, which gold and silver already have. It's for the payment system market. Well, okay, what is it can you buy only with Bitcoin out there in the world right now? You can't use dollars. You can't use another cryptocurrency like Monero. What is the value proposition exclusively for Bitcoin? What is it that you can't buy with any other currency that you can only buy with Bitcoin? Okay, so put that into a diagram and then come up with stuff that you can only buy using fiat money. Okay, you can only buy a certain number of things with fiat money. Put that into another diagram. And certainly there are going to be more things in that bubble of your diagram than Bitcoin. And then take Monero. Okay? Monero is in its own league because of the takeover on the dark web marketplaces. Because there are certain people who will only accept Monero. They won't accept Bitcoin, and they can't accept fiat because it's not like you can use a credit card on the dark web marketplace because that destroys your anonymity. And even there are people out there in the clearnet markets who, quote unquote, have goods and services that aren't necessarily dubious or illegal. It's just they want to stay private and use fungible currency, and they're crypto believers and that kind of thing. Well, put that into its own diagram as well. What is the unique value proposition of Bitcoin? Who is only accepting Bitcoin and doesn't accept any other cryptocurrencies like Monero and doesn't accept fiat? Can you name one? I can't think of one right now at all. I can't think of one. Everything I can get with fiat. Or if I got to go on the dark webs to get it, or if I got to go in the black market, I can get it with Monero. And I can't get with Bitcoin and cash. And so, again, the question is, what is the unique value proposition for Bitcoin? And again, people will pivot to the store of value thing. They'll say, well, Bitcoin's been around the longest, has the network effects, blah, 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 blah. It's digital gold. But that doesn't work because digital gold doesn't work as a concept. Like what makes gold a store of value is not only that it's fungible, which some of the Monero bros will say make Monero a store of value, make it like gold or a digital form of gold, is because it's fungible and it's got scarcity and that kind of thing. But and it also has a tail emission, and gold in a way has a kind of tail emission. Whenever there's a demand for it, people can just go out and buy it. The market signals will be sent, all that stuff. And because Monero has a tail emission, it's got a long-term security model, which is better than Bitcoin. but also that allows for something similar to gold, where more Monero is introduced into the market at a rate that makes it so that you don't really run out of Monero. But that's not really a problem because of the infinite divisibility thing, or asymptotically approaching or whatever. Anyway, so the digital gold concept doesn't work for this reason. Gold is a metal. It is a unique element on the elemental chart, which can do things in reality that something digital can't do. Okay, you can't have digital jewelry necessarily. Maybe you can in the future, but it's not going to be the same as having gold. Okay, you can't flake your steaks with gold. You can't have technologies which use gold, because gold is a very conductive material. Okay, gold has very unique elemental properties which can't be replicated digitally, and because of its ability to denote status, because of its use as jewelry and its other uses outside of that, maybe to decorate homes and to do stuff like that, there is an inelastic demand for the metal, not necessarily because of its monetary properties, but because of its elemental properties. Okay, that doesn't happen with digital assets. That doesn't happen with cryptocurrency, because the function of cryptocurrency is to transmit and store financial information. Okay, now that capacity can be duplicated. It's just different softwares. Okay, and so you're storing not necessarily this value which can be used in the real world as a unique element on the elemental chart. You're storing like a built-up network, if that makes sense. You're storing the capacity to use this financial information in a way which is unique relative to the competition, which in Monero makes sense but doesn't for Bitcoin, right? And so again, the question then becomes, what is the value proposition of Bitcoin, other than it's got name brand recognition, it's got the first to market, and it's got some level of digital scarcity. But other cryptos again can have digital scarcity, but maybe people don't trust it as much as they trust Bitcoin because it's been around for a few years longer. But then you got to get into the security argument, which we're about to get to here. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so here's what I said. I said, back in May, few ideas have harmed the adoption of crypto more than the concept of digital gold. And I said that true capitulation is when digital gold narrative is completely destroyed. Yeah, and I think it's going to have to be completely destroyed. And more people are going to not believe it if they lose all their value. And one of the problems with the current narrative of Bitcoin right now is it's been sold as an inflation hedge, again, because it's quote-unquote digital gold. But if inflation is still raging and Bitcoin has fallen this year from like 60,000 to now 15,000, how's that hedging inflation? And it's obviously not hedging inflation. It's just a speculative tech asset. Okay. And, any asset which starts 10 years ago and goes up an S curve is going to have a big rise in the price that's not necessarily tied to inflation. You understand? It's just the adoption of a technology, a new technology, especially a technology which has never been seen before in human history. There's a lot of interest in it. And as Pompliano said like a year ago, we memed, use like internet funnies to spread the word about Monero. We memed we memed Bitcoin to $1 trillion market cap. So that's not hedging inflation. That's just getting in on an S curve, getting in on an adoption hype, and getting in on a crazy speculative mania. And so that's just something else which is just dying off, another cope dying off. But anyways, this is Justin Bones. Let's talk about him. He's got a good thread on something we've kind of overlaid the channel here a little bit with. I'm not an expert on this particular argument, but this is one reason why Monero has tail emission, why it's very valuable, and why the idea that Bitcoin having a fixed cap of supply is not the most optimal idea that people think it is, even though it's relatively a good idea, at least relative to central bank hyperinflation. So he says here, Bitcoin security model is unsustainable. Price drops reduce security. and halvings exponentially lower the security budget. I think the next halving is in 2024. So if the price doesn't go back up by 2024, the miners are just going to be, they're going to be really hurting. And at that point, the only people who are going to be able to mine this stuff are like freaking BlackRock, who can afford the energy costs and the marginal benefit you get with the economies of scale. So this chart seems to be confusing Bitcoiners. I want to clarify its significance, explaining why the Bitcoin security budget has collapsed over the last year. And this is his chart of miners' revenue, which has gone down rather significantly since last year. Kind of tells the price, I would imagine. But he says this chart represents Bitcoin's miner revenue, not the hash rate, which is going up. Hash rate is actually a meaningless metric regarding security. Miner revenue can go down while hash rate goes up. This is because as hardware improves, it costs less to produce hashes. That is why we can't count hashes to determine the security budget. It is not these hashes that secure Bitcoin. It is the cost that goes into producing these hashes that secures Bitcoin. In other words, what matters is the cost of attacking Bitcoin, which is not determined by hash rate. Crypto economic game theory relies on punishment and reward, carrots and sticks. This is why we should measure miner revenue to determine the cost of the attack. This is the cost that needs to be overcome to attack Bitcoin. This is how the security budget should be derived. A common but demonstrably false counterargument to this is that nodes secure the network. This is a ridiculous proposition, as there is no Sybil resistance to non-mining nodes. This is a deep misunderstanding of Bitcoin, which leads to more problems in security and governance. So what does this all mean? This means that Bitcoin's long-term security is in deep trouble. Without extremely high transaction fees, the security of Bitcoin will inevitably continue to decrease until it drops so low that the network becomes profitable to attack, rendering it insecure. Right, and I did hear this interesting argument from Arctic Mine about the problem with proof of stake cryptos, which is that you could get somebody who forms a federation of people who have a significant stake, and then they could collude together to cause some kind of problem on the blockchain with their staking. And what they can do is they can agree within on the inside to just short the crypto that they're staking in order to really profit a lot when the problems that they cause through staking causes the collapse of the value of that crypto. And I found that to be an interesting idea. Let me know what you guys think. But, moving on, it's just kind of random. At which point there would only be one choice left. He continues, which is to increase Bitcoin supply inflation. Increasing Bitcoin supply beyond 21 million or allowing the network to come under attack with double spends. Bitcoin truly is between a pet rock and a hard place. Yeah, and if the supply of Bitcoin increases arbitrarily, how can you justify the digital gold concept at that point? How can you justify the store of value proposition? Because the proposition has been over the last 10 years, well, the supply cap is fixed and it can't change. The monetary policy can't change. This is what makes it different from central banks. But if you change the monetary policy in order to fix the security problem, which is essentially what central banks do when they print money, they're fixing a security problem, which is the collapsing of banks and the collapsing of debt markets and things like this. Well, how is that any different? Then the value proposition goes even more down from there. But moving on, bad actors are misleading Bitcoiners by downplaying this threat, leading them into this waiting disaster. Same thing with the privacy. I mean, it's just like, yeah, we're going to have privacy with Bitcoin one day. It just never comes. It's like they come up with Liquid Network, and they come up with all these lies about the Lightning Network being private, which the developers themselves say it's really not. It's not at that point yet. It's rather not private. And again, it's just more coping, right? By Bitcoin, the establishment, you can verify this yourself with a full node. Bitcoin is not impossible to fix by increasing the block size limit and building apps that people want to use and pay fees for. So, he's trying to give an olive branch. He's trying to encourage people to look into this solution so that Bitcoin could be fixed or more usable. No matter how unlikely I think this is after the utility was driven out after the block size debates, if you are a Bitcoiner and you want to fight for Bitcoin, this is how to do it, by allowing utility and actual use cases to flourish over Bitcoin as they have in Ethereum. It is your choice. Yeah, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day, is use case. That's what it's all about. Okay. So, moving on. Is there anything else I wanted to get to? But I did listen to this interview today, actually, when I was at work. John McAfee and this guy from Delphi Digital. And there's this one part, which is, I think, my favorite part of the video, where he starts to laugh at the guy because the guy's like, but institutions, they want to have a secure asset that they can store their value in. John McAfee's like, Bitcoin, a store of value? Is the air a store of value? And so it's just like, yeah, air is not a store of value, obviously, except when you're breathing. But, it's a funny thing. It's not a store of value. It's a cope. But rip McAfee. I love McAfee. Like the video if you love McAfee. God bless him. By the way, you guys should be liking the video. I never ask you guys to like the video. Would you guys like the video for me so we can get this up in the ranks? Thank you. And moving on, MicroStrategy's Bitcoin loss just exceeded $2 billion. And this is a little joke. Binance has reached an agreement to acquire embattled nation El Salvador and is rebranding to El Binanco. So, yeah, because that Bukele guy. Dude, that guy has like an average entry price for Bitcoin of like $50,000. Oh, man. Dude, how there's not a revolution in that country, I mean, it's really quite impressive because, first you get onto this Chivo wallet, which barely works. They've got to like shut this thing off in order to do updates, so it's totally centralized. You're forced onto this thing, and, then the price of it collapses like 70, 80%. It's like, wow, thanks, dude. I'm glad that we could be like, your collateral pawns in this, social crusade of meme glory you want to go on. But, that's what he did. Taking big L's. Congratulations. MicroStrategy's Bitcoin losses just exceeded $2 billion. And, Sailor the Savior, A$AP Spurg. What more is there to say? We've been vindicated. We told you about the guy a long time ago. We told you to stay away from him. We told you he was full of it. God bless him. I hope he turns to Monero at one point. But you know what? The problem is, guys, as he said a year or two ago, he said, look, Monero's just too good. It's just too good. I don't want to get into it. The institutions aren't going to like it. It's just too good. It's too private. I don't know how the big boys are going to like that. So I'm going to go with the inferior publicly, the public ledger, whatever. So poor Sailor. And he posted this demonic video of some girl singing this song, basically telling you to buy sats and bail Sailor out of his position here. But we're not going to watch that. It's pretty cringe. It was a total waste of my life watching that. But here's an interesting story. Here's a very interesting story. So one of the coasts we've heard, Bitcoin is not confiscatable, blah, 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 blah. But it is, right? Here's a guy who had hacked the Silk Road, I guess. And he had 50,000 Bitcoin, which is, I guess, like $3.3 billion, something like that. After today, maybe like 2 something. But, the Silk Road hacker, the Fed's nabbed, was identified due to a single mistake he made years ago when using an exchange. So, one single mistake, and again, this is a hacker, bro. He's like a technically proficient fella. Okay, so he's probably read the Bitcoin Privacy Guide, the 100,000-page Bitcoin. He's read it. But he made a single mistake. And he made a little slip, and guess what? That mistake he made a few years ago came back to haunt him. Because what happened next? They threw him in jail and threatened him until he provided access to the $50,000 Bitcoin. So what's the lesson here? Wonderful story. Similar to the Bitfinex hacker bros, right? You make one single mistake with your Bitcoin, they can tie all these pieces of data together to figure out who you are. And as things become more KYC, as things become less private, okay, as things become more centralized, and one thing that's good about this whole exchange story is that people are going to be more incentivized to take their funds off the exchange. That's great. But there's still, as we've talked about in the past 3 or 4 videos, there's still like this incentive structure which is going to be in place for people to put their crypto on the exchanges so that it has economic utility. Because the big corporates, they're going to want to make sure that they're getting clean coins. They're going to want to make sure that the crypto they've got coming in is not from sketchy sources. And they are going to want these crypto exchanges to serve as sort of like their data analytical gatekeepers and make sure that whoever gets through that gate is allowed into the club and isn't coming from like Russia or something like that. So they're going to want you to use an exchange. And that's why Google came out recently and they said that they are going to make it so that you have to use Coinbase in order to purchase cloud services from them with crypto. And I anticipate that moving forwards into the future. So maybe the exchanges are going to have tremendous amounts of regulation to make sure they don't collapse like FTX. Maybe there's like an FDIC thing which kicks in, which makes it so that they're insured by the government. But you understand what that means. If they are insured by the government, they're going to do whatever the government wants, which means they're going to be hyper-regulated. KYC is going to be freaking everywhere. You're probably going to have a social security number if you want to have a freaking buck of Bitcoin on your crypto exchange. And yeah, it'll be regulatorily captured at that point, and then the crypto world order will roll out from there. But that's something to note. Privacy is a problem, okay? This whole they can't confiscate my Bitcoin stuff, not true, particularly because of the privacy problem. And yeah, that's why you want to check out Monero, obviously. But yeah. Stoic XMR. He says, just another reason why you're going to need Monero. Now, we had mentioned this as a joke like a year ago in our MasterCard carbon credit card video. We said that what if at one point you've got to use Monero to get into the black market to buy a steak for your birthday? And now, 9 News Australia is reporting a city in the Netherlands could become the first in the world to ban advertisements for meat over climate change concerns. So, yeah, I mean, total clown world, obviously, but that's where things are going. That is where things are going, man. You're going to need to, go to Jose Sanchez on the dark webs if you want to buy yourself some bacon biscuits, dude. I mean, that's where things are going, dude. If you want yourself a nice big Whopper that ain't impossible, if you want a possible Whopper, you're going to have to go to Jose Sanchez to get that slipped into your mailbox. So that's what's going on. And do I want to get to this today? I don't think so. A Fungible, cool guy. Give him a follow. He's got a take here on un-KYCing your Bitcoin by using atomic swaps with Monero. But as we talked about, that comes with risk, because what if you get tainted Bitcoin as Monero bro? I care for the Monero bros. I love you guys. I don't want you guys to get any tainted Bitcoin. Just stay in Monero. Just use Monero. It's awesome. So that's it. Back to building the business. Again, if you guys need bookkeeping services, tax services, payroll services, crypto consulting services, some guitar fiddling lessons, I ought to play for you guys one day. One thing that I'm going to be doing when I actually get back from this break, assuming that there isn't more like, cataclysmic world-ending news I got to get in on, is I'm going to do live streams. That's going to be more fun. That's going to be more interactive because you guys post so many great comments there in the comment feed that I just don't have an opportunity to respond to on the video chat, which I think would be cool. So I hope I can make this more interactive when I'm back, and hopefully I can get somebody to kind of help me out with setting that up. Like, I'd love to set up whatever Luke Smith has set up with his channel, where like he has Monero live super chats. Like, people send him Monero and somehow they're able to use that as the basis for a super chat. And I've done private super chats here on the channel where people send me Monero to that address you saw at the beginning there, which, by the way, thank you guys for the donations. The donations are remarkable. I mean, I've gotten a couple pretty big donations, and I shouldn't say that because it's like Monero and like, who needs to know or whatever, but seriously, whoever is like doing some of these donations, I love you too, I guess. it is nice to see that come to the wallet. And I did try to pay that forward after church with the cake pay. We went to Moe's, and I tried to buy my friend of mine a burrito using cake pay, but it took too long to load, unfortunately. But I think I did sell the Monero or the Moe's lady on Monero. I told her all about it. She was into dog coin, unfortunately. She was a doggy coiner, but I told her about Monero. I told her to check it out. So if you're watching, Moe's checkout lady, what's up? I'll be back. We're going to be doing the cake pay again. I'm going to be holding up your line for another 5 minutes. So sorry. But yeah, thank you guys for the donations. They're really great. But if you guys do donate, you can send me a message on Proton Mail if you want to do a shout out or something, or you just have a question for me or whatever. I should be more generous with my time given the donations, and I hope that whatever value that you give me, I hope I can reciprocate, or whatever value you've gotten out of this channel, I hope that you reciprocate. It's sort of a mutualistic thing we got going on here, a mutualistic thing of love. But I actually got a Proton Mail. Let's see. Simon Stream. Hell, oh, I hope I didn't just say your actual name, dude. I hope you don't got your name on the Proton Mail. That's probably a pseudonym. What's up, Simon? Hello, Matteo. Before going too deep into details, just want to say you are based. Keep on. Cheers from Switzerland. Listening, recurring since 2021. Well, thanks, dude. Love you too. That's awesome. I don't know if this is a private super chat, but I'm just reading it. And then Carl, of course, has been at work. There's some random dude who also messaged me asking if I was a developer on the Monero blockchain. Now, he said that my email is on some Monero forum. I'm not familiar with whatever Monero forum this is. I don't know why my email is there, frankly. Whoever put it there, why did you put it there? But I am not a Monero developer. I just cheerlead, basically. So, what's up? What else do I want to say? I think that's it. And then Carl, we've been chatting, but we've been having long conversations about orthodoxy and stuff, so we don't need to talk about that. But that's about it. Monero Matteo. Love you guys a long time. Hope you guys got some value out of this vid. Stay based. I'll keep you updated on the business developments. And that's about it. God bless. Bye-bye.